Greetings, my name is Michael Plasha, and this is part one of a three-part series that I am presenting entitled Embodied Practices to Reduce Stress and Boost the Immune System. Science tells us that whatever we do to reduce stress will naturally boost our immune system. Certainly during this time of the pandemic, we are facing perhaps more stress than is usual. I'm going to be referencing a little bit in the beginning of this presentation from a book called The Science of Yoga. It's by Anne Swanson. And she did a wonderful job for yoga teachers and others of taking a look at all the solid studies that have been done on the relationship between yoga and meditation and our health and all the systems in the body. So from her book, I wanted to reference something that might be obvious to you, but could be helpful. Did you know that Hans Sell coined the term stress in 1936 to describe the body's response to change? And he identified two types of stress: eustress, which is beneficial stress, such as engaging a work project, getting something done. And this is the type of stress that we might not think about. Usually when we think of stress, the connotation is something harmful. The other type of stress can be harmful if we don't manage it well, and that is distress, which is real or imagined stress that puts more pressure on your system. So one thing that yoga and modern psychology, psychologists agree with is that stress is an external event coming at us. However, how we perceive it and experience it is our internal response. So stress is really an internal experience related to external stressors. And because of that, we might be in a situation where we experience stress exactly the same way or not. So the external conditions and circumstances that we might perceive as stressful are going to be the same, but our internal response to them can be very different in how we handle that. And one way we can handle or manage it more wisely, perhaps, is through the obvious practice of breathing, something we do like 26,000 times a day, but we might not always be conscious of it. The yogis discovered this a long time ago, that our breath is not only a reflection of the mind and the body, but it can influence the mind and the body. And the influence has been more recently researched with some good scientific studies with the relationship with the vagus nerve. So first, we have the autonomic nervous system, which is comprised of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic allows us to be in that place of alertness. It's usually described as the fight, flight, or freeze response. Perhaps a more positive way of thinking of it is our ability to be alert and focused, like we have to when we're meeting a deadline or we're negotiating traffic on the thruway or in the city. We need to be on alert. The challenge can be getting off of the sympathetic nervous system, what is sometimes called sympathetic overload, when we're unable to do that. And the yogis all figured this out. When we accelerate, we're in that alert place. But then the yogis in the meditation tradition, they figured out how to put on the brakes, so to speak, where we can shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system relates a lot to what's called the vagus nerve, and it's our ability to rest and digest and get off of sympathetic overload and distress. So how do we do that? There's many techniques. We're going to explore some of these, certainly. And one, just to check in, which is an interesting practice in yoga, is seeing which nostril is more dominant. So our left nostril relates to the right hemisphere of the brain, which relates to the parasympathetic nervous system. And then right nostril relates to the left hemisphere of the brain and our sympathetic nervous system. So here's a simple practice just to check in with this. Bring up one of your hands, and you can just make a fist and release your index finger is fine. And then please close off your right nostril with your finger and just breathe in and out of the left nostril a few times. And on your exhale, release. And was that nostril partially open, fully open, or partially closed? Now let's try the other side. So use that finger, just close off your left nostril and breathe in and out of the right one a few times. And then exhale and release. So were your nostrils evenly open or evenly partially closed? Hopefully they weren't fully closed, or you won't be sitting up listening to me. So probably one was a little bit more dominant than the other. And the yogis figured out that we tend to be dominant nostril about 90 to 120 minutes per day in cycles, unless we have been doing practices for quite a while that bring about what we call hemispheric balance of the brain, and then the balance of the nervous system. Now this all relates to what's called the vagus nerve, and I'd like to reference that for a moment in the science of yoga. The vagus nerve is usually called the wandering nerve because it connects to the major systems of the body. So when we exhale, it stimulates the vagus nerve and increases our parasympathetic nervous system, the PSNS. Now, when we inhale, we tend to increase the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS. So one of the techniques in yoga is to lengthen the exhalations up to twice as long as the inhalations to promote that effect on the vagus nerve. And a little bit more on the vagus nerve here. I'm going to switch to another page. It originates in the brainstem. And it wanders down, like I said, through all the major systems of the body. And so when we're connected to toning the vagus nerve, and typically what's called ventral vagal activation, then we're more likely to experience love and connection with others, intimacy, fun, compassion. When we're more connected to the sympathetic nervous system, and this would then be what's called dorsal vagal activation, then we might be in that place of shutting down the vagus and being in a place of fight, flight, or freeze. So then we might experience worry, panic, hopelessness, and even disassociation from the body and the mind. When they're in balance, the experiences that will be calm and alert. We'll be in a place of courage as well. Now, can we be in this place all the time? No, that would be unrealistic. Certainly part of the day, we have to be alert and focused, but can we also be calm as we do that? That's a sign of this balance. So typically, our nervous system is fluctuating. And part of our practice is to be aware of that through practices like mindfulness, which we're going to explore in part 3 of this program. But anytime we're just aware of our breath, we're aware of how we might be internally responding or reacting to external stressors, is a place of mindfulness or awareness, which in our embodied yoga practices and meditation practices, we're cultivating this all the time. So we're going to continue now with some practices to help reduce stress and activate the connection with the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system. So you can do these practices sitting up, or if you're able to, please lie down, perhaps on a mat or a blanket or a carpet, something comfortable. The challenge with lying down is the dilemma of getting sleepy or spacey. So if you're low energy right now, then I would recommend sitting in a chair like I'm doing. And if you're sitting in a chair, you want to have your heels aligned under the knees. So the lower legs are going to be vertical, the thighs are horizontal to the floor. And you want to be a little bit more onto your sitting bones instead of heavy on the tailbone, where we might start to round the back. Then typically energy will lower as a result of that. We're going to continue now with what's called mindfulness of breathing. So in this practice, which comes from one of the ancient wisdom traditions, Buddhism, but you don't have to be a Buddhist to practice it. In fact, you might have heard quite a bit in the last 5 years about mindfulness. It's been on the covers of Time and Newsweek and other mass media publications. So in mindfulness of breathing, we aren't judging the breath and we aren't trying to direct it or control it in any way. We're just observing. So first, close your eyes if that's comfortable. And if it's not, then you could have the eyes slightly open with a soft gaze down towards the floor, your feet, or if you're lying on your back, towards your heart. And then begin to focus on the natural breath at the rim of the nostrils. Notice the air slowly flowing in and out. We'll continue this practice for at least 5 minutes. And as you practice, be open to the location of the breath changing. So at any point, you might feel the breath more naturally in the lower abdomen, perhaps the rib cage, the mid-chest or the upper chest, perhaps the throat or the nostrils. You might feel it simultaneously in a few places, that's common. But there might be a particular place that's going to be more obvious. And then try to settle into that place. And just notice how natural or unnatural this might feel. There can also be a subtle feeling of anxiety when we practice breath awareness, as if we aren't getting enough breath when we pay attention to it. See if you can just feel that without trying to change it. And I'll let you continue now for a few more minutes in silence. About another minute here. If your mind wanders or various thoughts arise, simply note, not breath, and return to where you feel the location of the breath the most. Now bring your awareness back to the breath if you need to. Observe its gentle flow. Natural inhalation and natural exhalation. Now bring your awareness back. So how was that for you, just to focus on the breath? Was it relaxing? Was it easy or challenging? Did you experience any subtle anxiety related to maybe not getting enough breath? And were you able to let that pass? Anytime during the day, if we would like to reduce stress, we just need to stop, take a slow, deep breath, maybe several, and just notice how that might reset us. You can temporarily put on the brakes. Of course, we don't want to do this in the car while driving, maybe at the office or at home. And then just notice how the body feels when you take a few slow, deep breaths. Now we're going to start to explore more functional breathing for life. And what I mean by that is in the West, it's described as diaphragmatic breathing. Here's some real brief A&P. The diaphragmatic muscle is a dome-shaped muscle. And when we're breathing functionally, it will move up and down, and it has this calming effect on the nervous system and the spinal nerves related to the spinal cord. It also has a calming effect on the organs of digestion. And in diaphragmatic breathing, when we inhale, the diaphragmatic muscle goes down. And so there's like an expansion in the lower abdomen. And then as we exhale, it goes up, and there's a natural contraction of the lower abdomen. So it's moving really between the solar plexus and the cardiac plexus. Now, if we're used to non-functional breathing for many years, especially what's called clavicular breathing, way up here, shallow breathing, then it can definitely be almost atrophied, like any muscle we don't use. It's going to become weak, and it might be almost immovable or frozen. Another dysfunctional breathing pattern is what's called reverse breathing. I used to be a reverse breather, and when I survey my yoga students about this, somewhere around 10–15% discover they're reverse breathers. And reverse breathers tend to have higher levels of stress and anxiety than diaphragmatic breathers. And so I'm hoping today, if you are a reverse breather, through this next practice, you'll be aware of that, and then you'll have some skills and tools in order to change it. It can make a really big difference in our lives to be able to do that. So what I'd like to do now is to break down the movement of the diaphragm. In yoga, we call it three-part breathing. And the three parts include the lower abdomen is the first part, and then the rib cage and chest are the second part, and then the upper chest all the way up to the collarbones is the third part. So first we're going to focus on the lowest part, the lower abdomen, or what is sometimes called belly breathing. So first, just place both hands on the lower abdomen near the navel. Sit up tall. Head, shoulders, hips in alignment, shoulders spread back, spine erect, chin level. And begin to focus just on the lower abdomen. Begin to direct the breath there. So as you inhale, you might feel a natural expansion into your hands. And then as you exhale, you might feel a natural contraction away from the hands. You can close the eyes if you like, so you can focus a little bit more internally on this movement. On your next exhalation, just return your breath to your normal. And did that feel normal to you or different? Now, in reverse breathing, we're doing the opposite. So perhaps think of it this way. This might be helpful. Is when the breath comes in, the belly goes out. And then when the breath goes out, the belly goes in, so to speak. Reverse breathing is the opposite. So what can happen is when I inhale, I'll actually pull the belly in. And then when I exhale, I might keep it in and just hold it there due to a lot of stress that we hold in this area. Or I might let it out on the exhale. This creates a tremendous amount of tension in the lower abdomen. And then people who do a lot of ab work, they can actually exacerbate that condition if they haven't already learned how to breathe properly. So they're already tight there and strong, and that has its benefits. But if we're holding the breath in that area, then that's going to have a lot of possible harm to the nervous system. And it's going to keep us in that sympathetic overload place. That's going to be a sign of it, or what's also called the dorsal vagal activation, where we're just in fight, flight, or freeze, and we can't get off of it. And we'll experience that. Again, the biofeedback is we're holding tight in the lower abdomen. We're unable to soften there, relax there. Now let's move our attention to the middle part of the trunk, the chest area, what's sometimes called dorsal or intercostal breathing. Quite a few people are chest breathers. There are some people who are belly breathers. That's how we tend to start as babies. If you look at a baby, they'll typically be doing belly breathing. And that's a good place to start, especially if you've been a reverse breather. I would recommend that stay with belly breathing until you've mastered that, and then begin to explore the diaphragmatic breathing that we'll do in a little bit. But now for the next area, just place your hands on the chest. You could cross the wrists and have your fingertips on the rib cage, and the thumbs are going to be up towards the armpits. And now we're going to try to integrate the first two with a focus on the second part. Again, you could close your eyes if you like. And then to begin, first exhale and gently pull the abdomen in. Now inhale, expand the belly, and feel the air just coming up a bit to expand the rib cage and chest. Then exhale from the chest, the rib cage, gently pull the abdomen in. Again, inhale, expand the lower abdomen and feel the air flowing up to expand the rib cage and chest. Exhale and gently contract. Inhale, gently expand. Exhale, relax and contract. Repeat a few more times. After your next exhalation, return your breath to your normal. Release the hands. And how was that for you? Was it easy or challenging? Is it the way you usually breathe, in the chest area? Or you tend to be a belly breather? Now, the third area is near the collarbones, what's called clavicular breathing. This is very shallow breathing. It tends to be what we might do if we're like in a panic, a heightened reactionary moment based on some strong external stressor, like a bear is running at you, or a car might crash into you, and you've got a moment to process that. We'll tend to activate this area. So first, just to get a sense of it, just cross your wrists and place your fingertips on the collarbones. And first, just try to breathe up in this area and see what that's like for you. Try not to get the other two areas involved. Then on your exhale, release. And what was that like for you? For me, I tend to feel some anxiety right away because I'm not getting as much breath as I normally do. I'm used to 3-part breathing throughout the day. And so I'll feel that, like I'm just not getting enough breath. Now let's try to put the 3 parts together. So if you like, this can be helpful. You could place one hand on the navel. You could place your other hand near the sternum so you can get a sense of the chest area plus the upper chest and the collarbone area. So I'm going to give you some basic instructions, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple because the breath, even when it's moving slowly and fully, we don't have a lot of time for thorough instructions. And just see if you can follow along. For some, this can be challenging, so just know that. I've had students tell me it's taken them up to 6 months to be able to breathe this way. So first, to begin the practice, if it's comfortable, close the eyes and then exhale through the nostrils. To inhale, expand the abdomen first and feel the air flowing up to lift the rib cage and expand the upper chest, and feel the collarbones rise slightly. Exhale from the upper chest, feel the collarbones lower. Relax the rib cage and gently pull the abdomen in for a complete exhalation. Immediately relax the abdomen so that you can now inhale and expand it. And again, feel the air flowing up to expand the rib cage, upper chest, filling the lungs. Exhale from the upper chest, relax the ribs, gently pull the abdomen in for a full exhalation. Continue inhaling, filling the lungs from bottom to top by expanding. Feel the collarbones rise slightly. And then emptying the lungs from top to bottom, exhaling by relaxing and gently contracting. One part blending into the next. So the breath is one continuous smooth flow. Breathe slowly and deeply, no strain. If you become lightheaded, return your breath to your normal. Let it stop, let it pass, and then maybe try it again. If you're used to shallow breathing, your body's adjusting. Continue. Now, after your next exhalation, allow your breath to return to your normal and observe how you feel. Then bring your awareness back. Again, you can practice three-part breathing sitting up, standing, which is ideal because we're upright most of the time. But in the beginning, it can be useful to lie on your back and practice this. Some people find it easier to access. But if you've been lying on your back, consider sitting up now for this next part. And let's check in with our nostril dominance like we did in the beginning, and just seeing if time, about 35 minutes have gone by, and our practices have contributed to any kind of a shift. So you can bring up your right index finger, just close your right nostril with it, and breathe in and out of the left again. Now exhale, release. Let's switch. Right nostril, breathing. And then exhale, release. So is one nostril more open than the other? My left one is a little bit more open than the right, which is how I started, which would suggest that I'm more right hemisphere active. One way to finesse this, in yoga they call it swara yoga, or the science of breathing, is to use this knowledge as a tool to help promote certain activities. So they say that when we lie on our right side, it will open up the left nostril, which relates to the right hemisphere of the brain and the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. So when we go to bed at night, it is recommended that we start out at least on our right side to promote a good night's sleep. Then when we wake up, if we aren't already in that position, we would roll onto our left side, which theoretically will open up the right nostril and stimulate the left hemisphere of the brain. So being more alert, which typically we want to be when we wake up and start to get on with our day. We can also use this knowledge to be aware of how certain activities are flowing or not flowing. So for example, if we're involved in a creative project and we literally have a creative block, check in and notice if your left nostril is literally blocked. What to do? You could do some deep breathing or let go of the creative project for half an hour, 60 minutes. Check in. Once your left nostril is open, you might find your creativity will flow a lot more easily. Similarly, let's say you're working on some kind of logical, problematic, mathematical, or linear kind of project where you want the full capacity of the left hemisphere of the brain. Check in with your right nostril. If it's blocked, again, you want to take a break from it and give it some time and try something else. Now, a great technique that promotes this balance in the autonomic nervous system and to help access hemispheric balance of the brain is what in yoga we call alternate nostril breathing. So let's try it. Bring your right hand up. Make a soft fist and stretch out little finger, ring finger, and thumb. Now, if you have arthritis, you could just do this with your index finger. Then sit up tall, check your posture. We want to avoid rounding the back or dropping the head like that when we do this practice, because it's a lot harder to breathe then. And then please close off the right nostril with your thumb. Exhale through the left. Now inhale slowly through the left. Close it with the little fingers. Release your thumb and exhale through the right nostril. Inhale through the right. Close it with the thumb. Release the little fingers and exhale through the left. Repeat the pattern. Inhale through left. Close. Exhale through right. Inhale through right. Close. Exhale through left. And continue. About 2 minutes here. Once you're comfortable with the pattern, if you're already comfortable with three-part breathing, then you can incorporate that into this practice. After your next exhalation through the right nostril, return your breath to your normal, rest your right hand, and observe how you feel. And now please bring your awareness back. So, how was that practice for you? Alternate nostril breathing is even effective if with shallow breathers. So for some, it can be a bit easier to do in the beginning than mastering the diaphragmatic breath. However, once we can integrate both, there's going to be more benefits. So again, three-part breathing is going to calm the mind and energize the body. Did you know that when you take a slow, deep breath in, a full breath, you're bringing in up to 7 times more oxygen than shallow breathing? That's feeding all the cells in the body and promotes really more of a youthful, energetic attitude in the mind, as well as a more youthful body, perhaps. And then when we exhale completely, we're releasing up to 7 times more carbon dioxide than shallow breathing, which means we're releasing toxins from the system. This is why three-part breathing calms the mind but energizes the body. And then alternate nostril breathing helps to focus the mind. So it can help us to be more alert, but in a calm way, especially when we incorporate three-part breathing. These are timeless practices that have been practiced by yogis for thousands of years. I've been doing them for decades and have found these practices to be a wonderful way for me to shift from that healthy stress of getting something done, but then once I've completed the task, the ability to reset, put on the brakes, and rest and relax, the relaxation response. Now, I would like to read a little bit more information for you from the science of yoga. And this is about the vagus nerve. In a 2018 article in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, it aligns the ancient wisdom of yoga with the role of the vagus nerve in our physiological response to stress and relaxation. The vagus nerve is the only cranial nerve that leaves the head and neck area. It is mainly responsible for your relaxation response, telling your heart to slow down, improving your digestion, and encouraging social connection. You might have heard of HRV, or heart rate variability. So the toning of the vagus nerve in this manner is going to increase HRV. Continuing with this piece, rather than an on-off switch, the stress and relaxation responses work more like a dial or dimmer knob. This allows adjustment to the perfect blend of electrical activity from each branch of your autonomic nervous system, ANS. According to the polyvagal theory proposed by American neuroscientist Stephen Porges, PhD, the vagus nerve is split functionally in a way that helps us adjust effectively to the ability to either be in that place of eustress or distress, or no stress at all. And I looked him up. You may want to do this on your own. It's Stephen Porges, P-O-R-G-E-S, PhD. And you will find a lot of information about him, perhaps some interviews, and you'll be able to actually access some of his research studies. So again, we can just think of it as parasympathetic is the ability to put on the brakes. Sympathetic nervous system is the ability to accelerate when we need to do that. And an easy way to put on the brakes is an acronym that comes out of the meditation tradition. It's called STOP. S just means stop whatever it is you're doing. And that can be a challenge if we're used to rushing throughout our day, if you will. So maybe you need to put a little timer on your phone And when it goes off, you just stop whatever it is you're doing. And then T means to take a slow, deep breath. Or if you're fortunate and have time, several slow, deep breaths. And then O is just observe the effect on your mind and body. And then P in stop means then we proceed the rest of our day without awareness of being able to stop as needed. I've had my blood pressure monitored related to all of this. And if I come in to getting my blood pressure taken, I know I'm going to get it taken. So if I come into it and I think a lot of stressful thoughts and I practice shallow breathing and I hold my breath, my blood pressure will be quite high. But when I come in and I think of positive thoughts, like what I'm grateful for in my life, and I practice three-part breathing, I'll go back to my typical textbook classic blood pressure, which I'm blessed with it being very good for many years. But I've had fun with nurses and doctors over the years where I can actually spike my blood pressure and then bring it down and return to homeostasis. So we have about 5 minutes left, and let's continue with another breathing practice. The way we started, mindfulness of breathing. So again, if you like, you could lie down for this or remain seated. Close your eyes if it's comfortable, or have them slightly parted with a soft gaze slightly downward. Now, we've been directing the breath throughout this program, but now just allow the breath to unfold naturally by itself. Try not to direct it in any way. Become aware of where you feel the location of the breath the most. Has that changed at all due to our practices and your awareness? Or would you like to change it? Because maybe you're breathing more shallow than you would like to. Once we know how to breathe functionally, it's very satisfying. It's like enjoying a 4-course gourmet meal instead of a fast food meal. Be open to the location changing. Also notice any sensations related to each breath. Is the breath, each breath, warm or cool, moist or dry, even, uneven, shallow, deep, slow, medium, or fast? If your mind wanders due to thoughts or some other distraction, just note not breath and return to the breath. After your next exhalation, take a moment to check in. What kind of effect does conscious breathing have on your mind and your body? Do you feel more calm? Perhaps more connected to not only the breath, but to yourself? Yeah, give yourself a gentle wake-up stretch. Bring your awareness back. I hope this information and these practices that I've shared with you will empower you to master diaphragmatic breathing and breath awareness, and then to notice how that will help you manage stress. We can't always do anything about the external stressors that are coming at us, but we can have the freedom to choose how we would like to internally respond to those external stressors. So again, stress isn't so much an external event, but it's our internal response or reaction to that event that's going to increase stress or reduce it. I wish you well with that, and I hope you can join me in my next presentation related to these embodied practices to reduce stress and boost the immune system on October 21st at 8:30 p.m. It's called Relaxation Practices for Life. And I'm going to explore a few very effective and timeless practices that you can do during the day or even in bed as a way to promote a very good night's rest. And I hope you can join me for those practices as well. So thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I will see you on October 21st. All right, take care.